one additional piece of unsolicited advice, since we're on this topic, Joseph, I would recommend from my personal experience, I would stick with Americo.
Yes.
I would stick with Prosperity and AIG. Start with those three because we have a lot of great carriers that we're partnered with, and there's a plethora of options. But the thing is, if we start looking a little bit here, a little bit there, then we become overwhelmed.
All right, cool. So let's get started. Welcome to the Agent Q&A. You guys are your host here, John. We got Joanne and special guest again, Albert. We're gonna try to make it more of a three-way session where there's additional input from two backgrounds plus contracting with Joanne, and from a new agent standpoint from Joanne as well. So before we go into the questions from our group, we just have quick questions just for our audience on social media, our audience that could be clients, or audience that could be new agents into our business. There's a lot of phrases out there into the insurance industry where it could be confusing from someone looking from the outside. So first one, what defines a final expense policy? And what is the difference between that and any other life insurance? Would you say to that question, Albert?
Well, first of all, I want to say that when it comes to a final expense, it's actually just a concept that we're selling. It's not the actual name of the product. Some of them, they title it as that, but the thing is, it's actually a whole life policy. It's a whole life permanent coverage, and a lot of times they use it interchangeably because if you just tell a client like, "Hey, you're looking to take care of some whole life," like they may not understand how that actually works. But if you say final expense, generally it means when you pass away, it's going to take care of your funeral, take care of final arrangements, anything that's related to that, and maybe leave a little bit of extra money. So I think for people, they don't, you got to understand it's more of a concept rather than the actual name of the product, because sometimes I've explained to agents after the fact and they're like, "Oh, I didn't know that's what it meant."
They thought it's a separate product or something, right? Right.
They thought it was like whole life, final expense, term premium, annuities,
a mortgage protection. We're going to go into that too. So a final expense is just a whole life policy specifically for their funeral arrangements, right? Now, why do we call it final expense? It's catered to a certain group. Okay. So who qualifies for a final expense?
Well, everyone qualifies for a final expense, but generally the type of clients that start searching for a final expense policy typically be like in their late 40s to 50s, and then all the way up to like 89.
Okay.
Because that's the last age that we can insure. But I guess at that point, people's mortality hits them a little bit harder. They start to recognize this a little bit more. And then they recognize, hey, if I did die, my funeral's not taken care of. Who's gonna pay for this? My family won't have this money, or I don't want them to have to pay for this. So I should take out a policy just for this specific portion of the results in which my death will leave.
Right.
So there's obviously more aspects to that, but that's one of the most basic and fundamental parts of life insurance. That's the simplest thing to take care of, and something that we guarantee we'll have to take care of. So if you don't want to leave that burden on your family, or you want to put them in a better position, at least for just that part, for them not have to pay for your funeral, that's the easiest policy you can get.
And then usually for these type of clients, would you say they're in the pristine health, no conditions, no anything?
We hope for their health that they are healthy, but unfortunately when it comes, especially maybe it's our society thing, but as people start to get older, things start to build up in your body, and then you have a lot of people that are diabetic, and high blood pressure is a pretty common thing, obesity, lot of different things but they don't have to be in perfect health for them to qualify for final expense. When it comes to final expense, typically the coverage is anywhere from a few thousand to like 5,000 or so to maybe 30, 40, 50,000. So around that range, the insurance carriers, they're not so much worried about being out that amount of money. Right. For a term policy, if they're covering someone for like $2 million, like they're going to underwrite the heck out of it because they don't want to be responsible for paying it out during that term. For final expense, they pretty much accepted it. Their actuaries have calculated all this stuff in. They can almost calculate down to, with a certain level of precision, how long they anticipate the large majority of people they're going to live to. So that's calculated risk that the insurance company is taking on. So they're okay with paying it out. So they set the rates. You can accept it. Plus, there's also the normal level day one coverage, which covers them immediately. If people are not in such great health, we have graded policies, which there's a little bit of a waiting period, but it'll refund their premiums paid plus 10% or 25%, however that's structured. So if they pass away earlier than expected, the company's protected to a degree. And then we also have guaranteed issue plans for people that are really unhealthy, that have a certain health condition or conditions that make them uninsurable otherwise, which the guaranteed issues, I think, is an awesome plan because we didn't have it at our former captive company. And to be able to help clients out with that, I mean, it's a blessing.
Yeah. So just as a recap for Final Expense, what is it? It's a whole life plan. It's catered to our individuals between ages 40 to 80. We have a guaranteed plan for them. And for 80 to 89, we have certain products that they still have to qualify for. But essentially, these plans, they're very lenient. We have clients that, have gotten cancer, AIDS, heart attacks, disabilities, wheelchairs. We can get them insured compared to a client looking for a big $1 million term policy. Right. If you're on a wheelchair looking for $1 million policy, there's not a lot of insurance companies they'll even think about accepting you. Right. So that's where Final Expense will come in. This is the main bulk of our business. And then go on. Did you want to add something before to the next question?
No, I think you guys covered it.
Yeah, and then going on to the next question. Yeah. So we have two main questions, and we'll have that. And it's going on to the next question. What's the difference then? What's a mortgage protection?
Also a conceptual thing, So mortgage protection, you can use a variety of different products for it. Typically, it's going to be a term policy or a term of return of premium. Depending on their underwriting, if they're not healthy, then not so healthy, or they're older and they don't qualify for a term, you can use a whole life product to cover it for a certain number of years to take care of mortgage payments. So I mean, it's also a concept. The concept is the person has an outstanding mortgage. If they were to pass away, that they want to be able to make sure that the family that they leave behind is not on the streets. That this insurance money that they leave behind is going to be able to pay off either part of the mortgage or pay off the full amount. So that part's taken care of. The remaining family members, have a place to stay. They're not in a terrible financial position as a result of losing out on the main breadwinner.
Right. So it's the concept. It's the life insurance. We want to use the life insurance to help pay off the mortgage, either mortgage payoff or mortgage payments. And then lastly, what's an income protection?
Income protection is if you're a breadwinner in the family and your family's depending on you for monthly income, you can take out a large policy like a term policy. A whole life, I guess you could do it. It wouldn't last very long.
Be pricey.
Yeah. But yeah, you can take it, but you could use an IUL if you have the economic means for it. So you can basically, you're able to replace your income for a certain number of years. So your family's able to make the adjustments during that time, because when someone dies, I mean, the thing is the family has no choice but to make the adjustments. It could be good adjustments. It could be bad adjustments, but the thing is they still have to adjust. So while they can't replace you as a person, they can replace your income for a certain period of time so they can try to maintain some level of normalcy as they're going through that transition.
Yeah. And then from Tom Hegna, he mentions, you should at least have about 10 years, minimum 5 years worth of your income. So what does that mean? If you're an agent, you're seeing a client, they make a decent income. Let's say they're making $100,000 a year. Well, their minimum just on income protection, outside their final expense, outside their mortgage protection, to cover their income, they need at least 10 years worth of their income. So they need $1 million. Now, this is where it's a great idea for you to come back and say to the client, what do you have in force? What do you have of life insurance at your work? Okay, well, let's say you have 3 times your income of life insurance at work. Well, great. Let's support you and give you an additional 7 years. So just don't think too quick of like a client saying, I got life insurance. They don't need it anymore. Right? So it's all about the logic and the concepts of what we're selling to the client. Okay.
You got 2 cute little girls.
Yeah.
So they're young. So you took out a couple term policies. What was that for?
So I figured I got either an income or a college education, or just in case I'm not around before they turn 20.
So more for income protection, or?
Yeah, I figured, okay, I bought $1 million. As soon as I have a baby, I buy $1 million 20-year term. Okay. So I figured 20 years is the key point. If I die before the 20 years is up, there's $1 million for that child. Okay. And then I have the second baby, I buy another 20-year term. So my first baby's 5. I only got 15 years. So 14 and a half years left on that. Who cares? Should be 20. But I got another one.
When they hit 20, they're on their own.
Yeah. Hey man, they can grow up. They can get a job at
You
that
did your
point.
part.
Yeah. Income protection, more like my liability of responsibility. I gave myself a 20-year responsibility period. Right. So after that, hey, shoo.
So if you were to pass away during that 20-year term, what do you anticipate they're going to do with that money?
anything they want, but they can have $1 million to either go to school, college, income, whatever they want to do, buy a house. So it gives them the flexibility of whatever they want to do, right? But after that, they should be going to school. They should be getting their own jobs. So, but I do have 4 policies. I do have a term with the return of premium to offset that with the policy on final expenses and other things.
So they still have the financial dad, but not the physical dad if something were to happen to you.
Yeah,
That's nice.
ideally, in case I want to go out, Harry, there you go. We do a lot of stupid things. Would you agree? I drive a lot. I text and drive. I'm more like I text and I somehow drive.
Somehow arrive.
I somehow arrive.
Sometimes you're like, oh, how did I get here?
Yeah. Sometimes I would go in Vegas and be like, oh, I'm home.
What happened in the last 30 minutes?
3 hours. So you never know, right? You could be cautious or, irresponsible. But just in case something happens, we live in LA. You never know. You go to the wrong client's home.
But that's the thing about life. You can be as cautious as you want to be, but you never know. I mean,
Right.
when God calls you home, calls you home.
I figured there's money for them just in case anything happens, right? But after 20 years, hey, you're grown. So it's a good idea. So now we're going to go into the questions for our guest on hand. Joseph, Mark, if you guys can unmute or go on video, it'll be great for us on our content. It goes on YouTube. Any specific questions? You got myself, you got Albert, you got Joanne with contracting, administrative, anything that you have a question of. Feel free to unmute.
Yeah, hello. So one question is just starting out, which sort of demographic do you think is a good demographic to start with? Like what product is a good product to start with?
Okay, so let's start off with your background. How long have you been in life insurance? And then also how many states are you licensed in?
Just California for now, and I'm just starting out, so.
Okay, where are you in California? Are you local to us, close to us, or?
No, I'm in Northern California.
Okay, and how long have you been in insurance?
Just now my license got approved yesterday, so.
Hey,
Congratulations.
congrats.
Yeah.
Welcome.
All right, so you do not want to create a demographic. Okay, so just like what we mentioned, from final expense, mortgage protection, income protection, anyone and everyone is your client. So anyone 89 and under, if they have a method of payment, either card or bank account, and they're still breathing, we can sell them insurance.
Okay.
Right. So the idea then is we have all the products. So your license came in, we're going to get you contracted. You're going to get some agent numbers in, right? Now you got to look at it. I have the product to sell to anyone. Where do I get my clients? Where do I attack? Who do I attack? Anybody can be a client to you. So you can do it through happenstance. You can do it through leads. The biggest thing is then creating a lead source for you that's going to work out.
Mhm. Okay.
What would your inputs be?
No, I think you're on point with that. Yeah.
Also think what we started on as far as final expense, I think that's the easiest product to work with because it's very simple and straightforward. It's anywhere from 5,000 to like 45, 50,000. Covers your funeral expenses. When you die, your family will have this amount of money. So like we went through that brief scenario about John, aside from being a troll with his kids and bullying them at times.
Yeah.
The thing is we actually walked through the process because I'm like, you want to leave them $1 million if you were to pass away in the next 20 years, but what do you need? What is specifically are you covering? Like he's thinking about potentially college, potentially leaving in the income that they would be depending on otherwise if he's not here. But when it comes to final expense, I mean, everyone's going to die. Everyone has to take care of funeral expenses, whether you care to acknowledge it or not, whether you want to take responsibility for it or not. I mean, like it won't affect you directly, personally directly. But the thing is, when you pass away, someone's going to get stuck holding the bag. It's going to be your family members. And most people, however their personal relationship is with them at that certain point, deep down, they probably love their families, I would imagine. So the thing is, you want to just be responsible enough for just that very portion, take care of that part. And if we believe in that product, we can convey that same type of energy and enthusiasm and transfer that over to them to help them understand why it's important to just do the bare minimum, man. That's it.
And just to add to that, like if you look at the 3 products or the 3 concepts that we have, you need dependents for income protection. You either need a spouse or children. You need a mortgage for mortgage protection. you don't need either for final arrangements or final expense policies. So you can sell in single individual. They might have siblings, they might have parents that need to pay for their funeral. You can sell them on that. So that type of demographic alone would be the highest. So typically we sell about 80 to 90% of our business on final expense.
Okay.
And then you slowly get better. You know, you start selling mortgage protection, you start selling annuities, you start selling, you know, other products that we have. But I would start off with that.
Plus once you get that base down, the thing is it makes everything so much easier because the application for final expense is shorter.
Yeah.
The underwriting is much simpler because they're willing to accept more health
Risk.
conditions and risks and medications and all this stuff. Like, I don't think they even asked about
Doctors.
felonies and all that stuff, right?
Yeah, certain carriers don't ask for a doctor. Most carriers don't even ask for your doctor. They just run your social. Some don't ask about your history of arrest.
When it comes to a term policy, typically it's for a larger amount, so that they're a little bit more involved in
Mhm.
underwriting. Your criminal history and all that stuff comes into play. So
Yeah.
if someone's had a DUI, it disqualifies them. So a final expense is a great base for you to start learning the business. And once you get the application process down, you know what to expect. Everything else comes a lot easier.
Yeah. You'd be surprised. Funny enough, you can sell homeless people on final expense. So that's the crazy even demographic. Like we live in
Okay.
LA. I've presented to some Skid Row clients and then they were like, yeah, I kind of want to leave some money behind for my kids. Yeah. And guess what? They're on, you know, Direct Express. They have government funds. They got a card. I was like, all right, let's write you up. Here's the $10, $20 plan.
I believe that the liberal term in California is the unhoused.
Yeah.
You're a fellow Californian, you know what
Free,
Yeah,
the free
I'm
living.
really,
Free domain.
Unhoused, yeah.
unhoused. I'm serious.
Houseless, uncivilized, undomiciled home. But yeah, so that's the great thing about the final expense. You can sell like $20, $30 plans to somebody that needs
Wow.
it. Yeah, you tell them, hey,
Yeah.
get a mortgage protect, get a small cremation plan, $5,000 coverage. If they're young enough, get them covered.
Wow, nice. Yeah,
Also, one-
that's great.
Yeah, one additional piece of unsolicited advice, you know, since we're on this topic, Joseph, I would recommend from my personal experience, I would stick with Americo,
Yes.
I would stick with Prosperity and AIG. Start with those three because we have a lot of great carriers that we're partnered with, and there's a plethora of options. But the thing is, if we start looking a little bit here, a little bit there, then we become overwhelmed.
Mhm.
If we start off with three main ones, and the reason why I choose Americo, Prosperity, and AIG to start off with, they're all instant decision.
Yep.
So then we'd be able to get a decision right there on the spot as we do the application. We know right up front if they don't get qualified, then we can pivot to another carrier, which with AIG, it's a guaranteed issue. So you have to go no further than those three.
Mhm.
And then Americo and Prosperity each pay a 10% bonus in addition to our normal commission, which is already a high commission, high comp levels anyway.
Yeah.
So if you we stick with those three, and then you learn the application process through those three, all the other applications with the other carriers, they'll make sense because you have that base. So
Yeah.
just keep
Yeah.
it simple. And that's, even though I've been in this business for 17 years now, I keep forgetting,
Yeah.
but I still stick with those three because I'm like, it's so, like, there's nothing wrong with simple.
You can't go wrong with
Yeah.
it. Keywords is instant decision. Okay. So when we were starting off, we were trying all these companies because they were quote unquote cheaper. You do the application, you don't find out within 2 to 3 days if they're approved or not. Then you get an email saying they got declined. Now you have to come back to the client. Now you have to chase them again. Now they don't want to pick up. Now they don't want to pay the higher premium that they can qualify for from the cheaper one. It's all a headache. So as a brand new agent, you want to prevent any of those headaches. You get them a plan. The plan will tell you you're approved, you're set. Boom, you get paid. Right.
I have
Nice.
something to say about that. So I realized I love
This
like
is Joel, by the way.
yeah, I'm on audio. I realized how annoying it is like wasting time. Like I was trying to like adjust my flight time when coming back to Orange County, and I was talking to the agent and she was trying to waive this fee for me, and she was trying to see and talk to her like higher ups to see
Yeah.
if she can get it waived for me. She's like, you know, let me put you on hold for like, I think it ended up being like 20 minutes to see if she can waive this fee for me. And it just made me realize like how impatient I am and how impatient most people are. Like imagine waiting like a day, 3 days, a week to get approved for something a phone call in an already an hour, situation when you're talking to an agent, like having to wait that long to wait to when you're approved, dude, it's already in my past. Like I'm trying to deal with this right now, cross it off my list, move on with my life. Like I think we underestimate how important the like instant decision is for real.
Yeah, and then once you get better, especially with just the 3 products, you're gonna get faster on the underwriting. You're gonna know their underwriting. Big tip is the Google Drive. Each drive and folder has an underwriting agent guide. There's an underwriting sheet and there's a prescription sheet in there. So you could just ask the client what they're on, and then it'll list you their medications. It'll tell you if it's approved or not, or if it's gonna go graded or modified with Prosperity. And so quick and simple. You don't have to do multiple things. You don't have to go through I would say like additional paid programs like insurance toolkits if you master those 3. Because those are additional costs for you.
Which I mean also limits your ability to be able to learn because you're focusing on just whatever whatever code it spits back out at you. You're selling entirely based off of price rather than value. Because the thing is with America, their final expense automatically comes with a matching accidental death coverage.
Yeah.
It doubles if you possibly due to an accidental death. It triples on a common carrier. So that's something that's unique for all of our other carriers in our portfolio. They don't have that automatically built in. So it may be a couple bucks more here and there, but overall, if you sell based off of the value, that's what's most important. I mean, like if you're out looking for a good meal, I mean, McDonald's is cheaper than going to a nice restaurant that has like a fancy burger that has a good ribeye that's ground up and it's the right amount of fat content and grilled perfectly on
Right.
as opposed to, hey, it's all the same and I just rather pay less. I don't think clients necessarily think that way either. It's a lot of times it's the agent that projects that onto their clients. So we sell based off of value. We just focus on what makes our life easier too. Because there's no reason why it can't be a win-win situation.
Yeah. And speaking of value, so let's talk about that. This is are we assuming that you're gonna do telesales or are you gonna be in the field?
I'm gonna start with telesales, but definitely interested in getting in the field in my area.
Okay. So when you're doing telesales, that's the most important thing is to be able to sell the value, the need to the client before the price. Okay. So most clients, they're going to come at you and they're just going to say, give me the price. Give me how much is this for this and that. Okay. So since we're a broker, you want to expand on the carrier, what the carrier does, the strength of the carrier, what they do. Like when I'm selling Prosperity, this is what I tell the client. I'm choosing Prosperity out of the 30 carriers. I think they're one of the best ones because they tell you an instant decision. They tell you on the spot. So my main line, I say, we're going to find out before I even put in your bank account information, before we even ask your beneficiary, you're going to get to find out if you're approved on the spot. And then it asks, okay, this is your price. This is what your coverage is. Do you want to continue? So that's what's great about them. Other carriers, they might be a few dollars cheaper, but you don't find out until 3 days to a week. Okay? And you don't know if you're approved. Then we have to come back. So, and they're a big company, billion-dollar company, private. And then so you just expand on what the company does, how long they've been around, 100 plus years, all that stuff. That builds the value before you say the price, so that they're going to get a little bit of trust into the product as well.
Yeah. No, that aspect's way underestimated and undervalued, like Joel was saying, especially with the way people are now. I mean, we live in an instant gratification culture.
Yeah.
And then so if we tell the client like, hey, they already don't want to think about this because number one, who wants to think about them dying? Then they have to think about paying for dying. And then they have to think about paying for dying on an ongoing basis. And then they have to think about whether or not they qualify. So, I mean, like, it's already an unpleasant conversation, but it's an important one. So we need to have it. So the thing is, if we sit down with the client, if we can tell them, hey, we prepare them in advance. So here's the carrier that I'm going with. It's because of X, Y, and Z. It's because of this value. And it's going to be a simplified issue plan, which means we don't need to send a nurse out there to take a physical exam. We don't need to take blood and urine. We'll be able to run everything and we'll get a pre-check based off of your medical information bureau information, based on your prescription history. And then based on those things and how we answer the underwriting questions, if those things clear, we should be able to get your decision on the spot. And then most clients are like, oh, okay, that's cool. At that point, and it allows you to proceed forward with the with the presentation and the application. And then I've had plenty of clients, like by the time I'm done with the application and I'm like, all right, cool. So it shows here that you're approved. And they're like, what does that mean? And I'm like, you're approved. And they're like,
That's it.
that's it. And I'm like, that's it. And they're like, you don't need to send someone out of here. You don't need to go, because that's the old school way of doing it, through the fully underwritten style of underwriting. But then now, I mean, those clients, and they're like, wow, that's it. And I'm like, and they're like, when's the coverage start? I'm like, starts right now. Well, whenever they receive the payment. So
Yeah.
like you can do a client's a real service if you just understand this concept and you just continue to think about what they want. What they want is they want their coverage and they want the least amount of resistance. And if you can provide that, you'll put yourself in a great position to help a lot of families.
Yeah, and then also I wanted to set up an expectation for you for telesales, right? So you need to have a lot of conversations, right? So what is a conversation? You need to count your presentations in a day. Do you plan to be full-time or part-time?
Part-time.
Okay, so you want to maximize those part-time days that you're going to be doing. Okay, so let's say, are you going to have half a days in one day, or you're going to have a full day, your part-time days, like for example, on weekends? Are you able to work 8 hours, 6 hours, 4 hours?
Yeah, I'm gonna do 4 hours during the week, and then probably on Saturday I'll do a full day.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when you're looking at those hours, you want to maximize those times. And that's the great thing about being in telesales. You don't have to worry about driving distance. Okay. Now, so what you have to worry about instead of driving distance, you need to be worried about dialing amount of times and conversations with real clients. So I wouldn't count conversations if they said, hey, not interested, I didn't fill anything out. I would count conversations when we start talking about life insurance. Okay. So once you tap in and you break through from being a telemarketer to a real person having a conversation where they're responding back. It's not the, hey, this is Joseph. Yeah, how can I help you? I'm not interested. Don't count those. All right, so you're looking for life insurance, are you or someone else? Yeah, I'm looking for life insurance on me. What do you need it for? Burial? Okay, now we're having a conversation. So you want to extend those. Don't just go from a quote, build the credibility of the company and expand and then close. Now, will it happen all the time? Do we close all the time? What would you say your closing percentage from 10 presentations, 10 presentations into a phone?
3, 4, maybe.
Right. So understand the expectations. You're selling 3 out of 10, 4 out of 10. Okay. So don't be so let down if your first conversation doesn't end in a sale. And now you're all frustrated. Ah, man, this sucks. Right. You need 10. So if you can get 10 a day, 10 presentations a day, you're doing 3 sales. Okay. If you can do in your 4-hour session, you do 4 to 8, you'll get 2 sales. Right. So just count real presentations in. And from counting that, instead of counting the no's and the rejections, you'll get to understand the law of averages and the law of numbers. So just understand you got to do more to get to you the sales. And
How
expect.
How long do you think a full presentation takes?
10, 15 minutes or less, and then another 10,
Okay.
15 minutes for an application.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, anticipate if you make a sale, it's going to probably take you closer to an hour when you're new.
You're brand new, yeah.
Okay.
The presentation itself is going to be relatively short. It's going to be 10 to 15 minutes because it's a simple process.
Yeah.
But then actually, as far as the application goes, I mean, give yourself a little bit more time. But you know, if that only applies, actually, what I've come to learn is it only applies if you're setting appointments in advance.
Yes.
You know, so if you're doing a one call to close, meaning you get a client on the phone, and then instead of saying like, "Hey, I just want to set up an appointment. When are you free next?" Just go straight into it. And you know, for me personally, if I get them on the phone, I'm like, "Hey, I'm just giving you a call back about the response you filled out online for the life insurance." You know, so it takes about 10 to 15 minutes. You want to grab a pen and paper real quick. If they can't do it, they'll tell me that they can't do it, right? But if I offer them, "You want to do this later?" They'll say, "Yeah, let's do it later," and then they'll never pick up my call again.
Right.
I just screwed myself.
Yeah.
So I'm not to say the appointments don't work, but if you already have them on the phone, if they're available, knock it out then.
So call to close means you're assuming to close the sale on the spot. So assume a presentation, assume everything until they stop you. So assume that they're going to go through the whole process until they stop you, right? Yeah. So going into that, so let's say you're working 4 hours, you gotta look at it. You could do a presentation every 15 minutes, every 30 minutes. Application wise, that's where it's going to take. You know, if one carrier declines, then you have to pivot. You might do another like 20, 30 minutes on top of that. So, but if you're doing the 4-hour days, try to get like, I would say 6 to 8 presentations and you'll be solid. You're doing 8-hour days, try to get 10. Now to get there, this is where you need the leads, right? You need a lot of leads to be able to call, because if you only had bought 20 leads, you can call 20 leads if no one picked up in 1 hour or less. Right.
20 is easy. You can 20, you can knock out in an hour.
Yeah. You got nothing else going on.
You can knock it out in
If no one picked up, yeah.
20 minutes.
Yeah.
You can dial 1 minute a day. Nobody picking up. Yeah, you're gonna be dialing, and then you're gonna be sitting on your butt. Right? So, any questions on leads? We got like 2 or 3 minutes left.
Yeah, what would be the ideal market for leads when you're selling final expense?
Well, I mean, a great resource to start off with is the ILC, the Integrity Lead Center. So that's you go through the gateway, and then you can access it through there. So that's something that's already, the leads have already been vetted. You know, they've already there's a ton of variety of different ones. There's some age leads that are really cheap. There's some new leads. There's different ways in which they're generated, which there's an explanation. If you hover over the little information icon on there, it'll tell you how it was generated, or reach out to one of your uplines and ask for specifics. But there's different types, and so you can kind of go through and kind of cut your teeth a little bit on there, and then you can kind of figure out what you like, what your preferences are, because look, it's not like every lead is for everybody.
Yes.
And then there's plenty of agents, and from all my experience, there's some agents that say like, hey, I hate these leads suck. And then they're like, but I like these ones.
Yeah.
And then there's other people that'll come in and tell me the exact opposite. So it really comes down to your personal experiences. It comes down to your level of skill at that moment in which you're calling them. So sometimes it's not the lead. Sometimes it's just you're not that good yet.
Yeah.
And that's okay. And then, so, you know, you kind of have to develop that own personal understanding of how specific leads work. And then that's a great way to start, because they're already vetted. Now, there's plenty of other lead vendors available online. First word of advice, don't trust all of them, because someone will promise you the super cheapest leads, super high quality, but they're non-compliant and they're gonna get you jammed up. Okay. Or some of them are just total resold leads, and they're not legitimate.
Not
and
even
you're wasting your money.
compliant.
So you'll learn, and you'll make some mistakes along the way. Just try to make sure that they're not major mistakes. And if you want to, you know, have a strategy meeting with your upline, reach out to your upline, reach out to one of us if they're not available, and then we'll happily walk you through based off of what your budget is, how much you're looking to work, you know, what you're looking to spend, all these different factors. So it's not a one size fits all, but yeah, we'll be happy to go over that with you.
Yeah, I would also suggest, so once you're on Gateway, there's the boot camp in there, and there's the training modules in there. There's going to be a boot camp for Leads 101. They have a training in there too to watch that.
Okay.
That's pretty much it. Any other last words?
No.
Any other questions for us, Joseph, before we get going?
Yeah. Maybe just real quick, like, what's like the number one objection you get when you're trying to sell a final expense policy?
There's a lot of them.
There's a bunch
Hang
of
up.
them. Yeah, so there's also a rebuttals question in there. I would go through a lot on YouTube, but a
Yeah.
lot of them will try to just get you to give them a price without convincing them to be sold.
Well, let me go through the most basic one. The one that you'll probably encounter first is they'll say, I didn't fill anything out.
Yeah.
And when you call them, they'll be, I don't remember filling that out. And then, so at that point, you can't argue with the client because you can't meet force with force like that. So what you want to do is you want to just try to roll with it and be like, okay, well, yeah, just to confirm, you listed your date of birth as whatever. Is that correct? So to give them really simple, easy to answer question, non-threatening questions to answer first, and just kind of keep the conversation going. Because the thing is, like in anything with business, I mean, the thing is, even you don't have to have it all figured out, but you got to figure out how to just keep treading water until you figure it out.
Yeah.
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 So start with that. That's going to be the most
Okay.
basic one that you're going to encounter.
But the real answer to that is to be on the live dials. Get on the live dials. You'll hear everyone go through objections, get shut down, go through the nose, miss out on sales, and make some sales. That's the beautiful part. You'll learn while you're watching as well.
Nice.
Cool. So we'll see you on the live dials. We're going to be there. If you don't know where it is, it's joinelitedials.com.
Mhm.
And then we'll see you there. All right.
Thanks, Joseph.